I'm very happy to see so many Sierra Leone's today to get together here. And perhaps those who are not Ahmadis, that I have been to Sierra Leone, and it was a very memorable trip to Sierra Leone. Sierra Leone was, of course, dear to me long before, but after that particular trip to Sierra Leone, it became closer to my heart. It was not just a case of Ahmadis receiving me with open arms and with so much love. Everywhere, the whole society responded so wonderfully. Even the Christian bishops came to the gatherings and brought their followers along with them. And everywhere the reception was so cordial and sincere that I was deeply impressed. The second thing which impressed me about Sierra Leone so particularly was that they were very brave in expressing their disagreement on things, of course, but also brave enough to immediately accept the argument which was against them but which appealed to their conscience. They never chewed words regarding that. I remember in Rokupur, I think it was, that I went and during my first question answer session, like we are having a session today, the first person who got up like a jackrabbit, he just sprang up from his chair, was introduced to me privately by the person who was sitting next to me, that he is one of the most hostile imams of the area. And he has got up first and he is going to ask you some questions, embarrassing questions. We apologize, but we are sorry. So I said, don't worry, don't be sorry for me. Let him express what he wants to express genuinely, and I'll handle it, don't worry. So he asked me rather very rigidly and sternly the issue of Khatamun Nabiyyin. There is one thing which separates you, cuts you off from us, the rest of Muslims. After that, there is no meeting point. So what do you mean by Khatamun Nabiyyin? And what do you understand by this? And then claim that there is a sort of prophet after the Holy Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. So when he finished, very calmly, I started responding. And it so happened that during that hour-and-a-half long meeting, I answered only one question. That was his question. And when the answer was finished, again this Imam jumped forward and everybody thought perhaps he was going to attack me. And they rushed towards me. I said, no, don't let him come. Rushed forward and embraced me like, I was seldom embraced before. So warmly and kissed me and embraced me. He said, now I know what the meaning of Khatamun Nabiyyin is. That Imam who had lived there for many, many years, being the head of the opponents, in presence of all those followers of his who used to support him and applaud him for all the hostility he showed against Ahmadiyya, that man had the courage and honesty to immediately accept the viewpoint which he thought was supported by the Quran and by the Hadith and by the logic. So that is one particular aspect of Sierra Leone which I experienced everywhere. They were brave and very clear in their opposition to you, and just out of formality and so-called courtesy, they would not hesitate to express their disagreement in rather strong terms. But once you convinced them, they again had that nobility and that manliness in them to accept the defeat with smiling faces. So that is all about, for the time being, my memories of Sierra Leone. Late Mr. Joseph Mombo should also be mentioned with a kind word. He is no longer your president, but That man was a noble man, I know that. I met him. Whatever his shortcomings, whatever the shortcomings of those who surrounded him, and I repeat, those who surrounded him, they became the cause of the downfall. He himself was a noble man. God bless him and Allah bless Sierra Leone. So with that brief introductory address, I invite you to ask any question you would like to ask me, please. Yes? Now just a minute. I know you are an Ahmadi. Huh? You were born Ahmadi, aren't you? So why don't you first give the non-Ahmadi friends and visitors a chance to address to me their questions. If there is no one who wants to ask a question, then of course I invite you and others. Yes, please. Have they made an arrangement for the microphone? Okay. After you have made up your mind to ask questions, you better come and sit over there. The chairs are already provided. It would save us time for people to come from different places and reach the microphone. So during the question and answer, some people make up their mind to ask the question. They are requested to come forward and sit over the chairs provided there.
Your Holiness, could you please tell me briefly about the Ahmadiyya movement in Sierra Leone as a whole?
Yes.
That's my first question.
And would you kindly briefly introduce yourself, please?
Yeah. I'm Francis Banskima, a Sierra Leonean. I attended Ahmadiyya Secondary School, Owajibu, Form 1, Form 2. And later I came to...
Educated there around the school, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Mr. Atta was my principal, who is here right now.
I see.
Thank you.
But they did not change your name, did they?
No, please.
See, that is the one difference about Ahmadiyyat in Sierra Leone and Christianity in Sierra Leone. When they introduced schools and education, what they did was that they changed the names of the innocent students who entered the schools from whatever names they had to Christian names. And they grew up under the impression that they had been born Christians. That is one thing about Ahmadiyyat in Sierra Leone. We have been very busy serving the cause of education and health, general health, but we never played any, if tricks is too strong a word, we never took any means except the straightforward ones for preaching Islam to Sierra Leone. Secondly, we never differentiated between a Christian student, a non-Ahmadi Muslim student, and a Muslim student, Ahmadi student. They had equal rights, they were treated with the same honor, they had the same freedom of expression, and Ahmadiyyat was never rubbed into them. As far as our relationship with Sierra Leone is concerned, I remember after you asked me to briefly tell you the whole history of our relationship with Sierra Leone. When I met your ex-president, he stood up and in response to my first presentation to him, he said, let me tell you one thing, that throughout our history of contact with Jamaat Ahmadiyya, we have not come across a single instance where Jamaat Ahmadiyya tried to meddle with politics in the name of religion. They knew the things which belong to different compartments, and they never meddled with things immorally. And then he said that that is one thing which reminds me to tell you. It was a compliment and also a sort of warning. He said that we have a golden principle, that you will never permit religion to interfere with politics. And although we have no complaints, but this is our principle, you must remember. So that is our past history. This is what we have never done. But in response to this very wise expression, I reminded him that, Your Excellency, you have said, you have expressed a golden principle. But let me remind you with respect that you have expressed only half a golden principle. The full golden principle should be that you will never permit politics to interfere with religion either. If you had said both these things, then this should be one full golden principle. So it's truth, but only half the truth. Religion has no right to interfere with politics, but politics has no right either to interfere with religion. And I must say, in his nobility, he accepted with a broad smile and said, yes, you're right. So this is our role throughout the history of Ahmadiyyat, the presence of Ahmadiyyat. We have been serving the cause of the poor, the needy, those who need help in health or in education, without tying it with their becoming Ahmadis. But we have been preaching, of course, at the same time. And so far, to my knowledge, except for the beginning, in the early times, there used to be severe persecutions of Ahmadis at the hands of not only non-Ahmadi Muslims, but Christians and pagans and others. But that is buried in the past. To my knowledge, during the last, say, 20 years or so, I have never heard of any such thing happening in Sierra Leone.
Thank you very much, Your Holiness. My second question is, to what extent have the activities of Ahmadiyya Mission affected by the rebel war in Sierra Leone?
I don't think it is a rebellion at all. It is just the Western propaganda or propaganda of some vested interest, if not Western propaganda, that they are representing the picture of what is happening in, very tragic happenings are taking place in Sierra Leone, what is happening in Sierra Leone as a rebellion. There is no such thing. It's an invasion by forces which are bandits of robbers and dacoits who occupy an area and follow a scorched earth policy and destroy hospitals, schools, mosques, other places of worship. Rebels never do these things. Those who rebel against a regime, they don't destroy their own country. So when they occupy things, they try to establish peace through peaceful means. They want to promote such institutions as are made for the benefit of the people. But what we hear from Sierra Leone, from different sources, it is not at all a rebellion. It is an invasion of Sierra Leone, and very atrocious invasion of Sierra Leone by the forces of Mr. Taylor. Mr. Taylor, you must remember, was one of the rebels in Liberia. According to the United Nations reports, he occupied most of the rural areas, and Mr. Johnson, on the other hand, was not as successful, according to those reports, I have not yet verified, as Taylor was. So they believe, many among them believe, that Taylor was more amenable for the United Nations forces. So he laid down his arms, accepted the truce, but the African organization preferred Johnson to Taylor, with the result that Johnson was given a share in the government, while Taylor was left out high and dry without any fruit of his erstwhile labors. This is what angered him, according to the reports, and he has become a sort of that hero robber who raids the neighboring country and brings the spoils back to his own country and maintains his forces with the help of those spoils. So I think this is the general picture as emerges from various reliable sources. The Ahmadi attitude to all such things is that of full condemnation, of course. Even if they were rebels, they had no right to destroy noble institutions. They had no right to slaughter and quarter the bodies of Dutch priests, his wife, his children, in such cold-blood, murderous attack on them. That is not only the only crime they are committing against the Sierra Leone's. If they have a fight with the government, it's their affair. We have nothing to say. But what is the fault or the sin of the innocent Sierra Leone people? Why should they be made to suffer so terribly for the fault of any regime, if it indeed was a fault of a regime? What is happening, according to our information, is this, that they forcibly recruit people from an area and take them back to the places where the army is trained, the regiments, and then tattoo them with a special mark showing them to be rebels. Now they tell them, look here, now these marks on your body. If you are captured alive, you will be tortured to death by the forces of Sierra Leone, because they will count you as traitors. So you have no way left but to side with us and continue fighting. Now, one thing I have to say, and which indeed extremely deeply can hurt me, was that this is exactly what the Sierra Leone forces did. They played into the hands of the rebels or the invaders, and when they caught an innocent Sierra Leone soldier, however much he would protest against the allegation that he was a traitor, however much he would try to prove that, look at my family, my ties. I was a helpless young man. They were shooting everybody who would refuse to play their game. So I had left no choice but to follow. But they would slaughter him mercilessly in the sight of everybody, as if to scare people away from rebellion. It worked exactly in the opposite. It achieved exactly the opposite result. So they knew then that what warning was served to them was right. So willy-nilly they have been turned into rebels. If, on the other hand, the Sierra Leone army had treated them with respect and love and tried to disbrief them if they had been briefed wrongly earlier, and wash their brains or whatever influence was imprinted on them by the rebels, I'm quite sure the other rebels, the so-called rebels, also whenever they have found an opportunity, they would desert the army of Mr. Taylor and turn back to their own country. So that is a very, very tragic mistake which has been committed, which is resulting in the prolongation of this most despicable situation.
Thank you. My next question, I would like you to forgive me about it because I was taught about it in school, but I forgot about it. Who was the first missionary sent to Sierra Leone? That is, how he started his teaching and which part of Sierra Leone?
Which one? Is he talking about the first missionary? Oh yes, that's right. It was late Maulana, Nayyar Sahib ka pura naam kya hai? Abdul Rahim, that's right. Late Maulana Abdul Rahim Nayyar, who had a very imposing personality. I remember him as a child. He used to wear green, long green robe and a green turban. He had a flowing beard and very noble face. His style of address was also very impressive. So he was the first Ahmadi missionary to reach Sierra Leone's soil, and it so happened that the first gathering he addressed was about 10,000 people in one large area where the chiefs had cooperated and gathered his followers. And before that, there was a noble, some divine, some holy man in the area who had seen a dream that Imam Mahdi has appeared. It was a Muslim area, and he is somebody representing Imam Mahdi would come here. He would be dressed in green, and he saw exactly the figure of this missionary Maulana Nayyar in his dream and told his people that this is what is going to happen. When he comes, they should accept the message. So when he started addressing, everybody remembered the dream of that late holy person who was not alive at that time, but the message was very strongly imprinted on the minds of the people. So they remembered, and they all accepted Ahmadiyyat as one lot. And that telegram created a great stir in Qadian, when after a few days of his arrival in Sierra Leone, in Qadian, a telegram reached addressed to the then Caliph, Hazrat Khalifatul Masih Sani, the second head of the community, that Alhamdulillah, an army of 10,000 have accepted Ahmadiyyat, and with the grace of Allah they have joined. There was a great celebration in Qadian, great stir. But that was only the beginning of a future which we are witnessing nowadays. Last year, it was around 100,000 Sierra Leoneans who accepted 60,000 or what, total, out of the total of 200,000 sum, largest was the Sierra Leone's share. Do you remember how many there were? Beyond 50, I'm sorry. This year they have promised, yes. As I was telling you, I remember there was something wrong with my figures. They, 53,000 of the 200,000 of the whole world were Sierra Leoneans. And encouraged by that great success, they promised that next year, inshallah, would try to reach the figure of 100,000. Now, unfortunately, these disturbances have taken place, but still the news which is pouring in is quite encouraging. It is Allah who would grant us that success. So this time, inshallah, I hope this will be a real army, 10 times the first number of troops which entered Ahmadiyyat during the first entry of Nayyar Sahib.
The next one is about roughly, according to the last session and census in Sierra Leone, the population of Sierra Leone is about approximately 5 million people. I'd like to know from that time how the Ahmadiyya mission, or how far it has been expanded.
We don't know. We have not kept any count. But we know for certain that last year it was 52,000 who joined, and previous to that it was around 40,000 who had joined Ahmadiyyat. And the pace is increasing. One thing which I saw was that wherever I went in Sierra Leone, there were Ahmadiyya boards. Everybody in Sierra Leone knew what Ahmadiyyat was. That is one country where nobody had to introduce Ahmadiyyat to anybody. You say Ahmadiyya, and they of course understood. And the good thing was that they always responded with love and appreciation. So much so that when in those days, there was a great problem Sierra Leone government was facing. Diamonds were being smuggled through all possible routes to Liberia and across. So it was decided by the government that almost at every 10-20 miles there would be a check post, and police would stop all cars, all buses, and they will be searched and searched for diamonds. But maybe after a few leones they would leave the passengers alone. But this was very bothersome. So we requested the police or Home Department to provide my convoy with some sort of papers which we could show at these places, so that they could leave us alone. They said, no paper needed. You paste, a token on your cars telling Ahmadiyya Muslims. That's enough. And that is exactly what happened. Our cars were pasted with tokens, like before going to the ferry for crossing the channel, something is pasted on your car indicating that this car has been checked. Nowhere were we stopped. We had full trust that if it is Ahmadiyya, they will not be smuggling. So this is a great, I see, proof of their trust of Ahmadiyya message. The number must be quite some.
Having got the rough estimate, how these people have been converted, is it from their childhood or at their adult age?
Normally it is at adult age, not at childhood, but only those children and family members are included who follow their parents. So this conversion takes place family by family, mostly, not in all cases, where the children are already grown up and have become adults. Many a time it happens that they take their own decisions, they don't follow their parents. But where the parents are grown up, but the children are of the normal age, below teenage, etc., it seldom happens that they don't follow. They always follow their parents.
Okay. The last one, Your Eminence. How far has Ahmadiyya Mission contributed in any way to Sierra Leone since the rebel war started?
Contributed?
Yes.
In what way? By your help?
Socially, economically?
Oh yes, we are doing a lot, yes. We are doing a lot with the grace of Allah. And they know it in Sierra Leone. The way we are helping is visible. Everybody knows there. United Nations organizations recognize that help. And all the NGOs, they know what we are helping without claiming any applause in response to our services. We are doing it with the grace of Allah. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, please.
I'm Samuel Kalon
Yes.
from Joikoya, Kenya, Sierra Leone.
Yes. We've got a very strong and staunch Ahmadi who is also Kalon. His two sons are getting their education here at some university. You don't belong to that family. There's a large number of Kalons?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
It's a very large family.
It's not a family, is it? Or is it a sort of sub-tribe?
The root is one.
Right, sub-tribe. Please.
Okay. I was invited here today by Dr. Kamara.
Yes.
I never know what is Ahmadiyya. I heard the name, but I don't know what it means.
Have you lived long in Sierra Leone?
Of course. Well, I don't have...
So that is one exception to my statement. There are some people who have been brought up in Sierra Leone and don't know about Ahmadiyyat?
No, I've been hearing about it, but to be frank enough,
You had heard of it, you knew Ahmadiyyat,
Ahmadiyya,
but you didn't know much about it.
Yeah.
Is that what you said? Yes, fine.
Yeah.
Okay.
You see?
Okay.
So I don't know what it really means, the name Ahmadiyya.
You want to know?
Yeah. And why is it separated from Islamia?
I'll explain.
And the third thing, when they are all speaking the same language, that is, Muhammad, in whom be peace and blessings of God, is a messenger to the one God.
They speak the same language, but not only that language, but other languages as well.
Yeah, I hope you...
It is a case of the truth, but not the whole truth.
Okay.
And not a case of nothing but the truth. If they were speaking the same language, all of them, why should there be 72 sects in Islam? And warring sects for that matter. Have you forgotten the strife between Iraq and Iran, which took place only a few years ago? There was a drawn-out war between Iran and Iraq, and both claimed that they were the Muslim Mujahideen, that is fighting the holy war, against the infidels. According to the Sunni forces of Iraq, Shias of Iran were infidels. They had nothing to do with Islam. So it was pure jihad, the holy war, the Iraqis declared, which was launched against infidels of Iran who claimed themselves to be Muslims. And when a Shia was killed in battle, there was shouts of Allahu Akbar, one infidel less. And the same, exactly the same was happening on the other side of the borders. When Iranians killed an Iraqi, they shouted Allahu Akbar, one infidel less. And, one very less type of slogan. And they all said and claimed and repeatedly mentioned it on television, in newspapers, etc., that ours is the war of Islam and theirs is the war of denial of Islam. So whoever dies on our side is a martyr, he will go straight to heaven. Whoever dies on their side will be hellbound. I doubt if you consider that to be the same language spoken of course, but from different sides. If one is right, the other could not be right. So this is what has become of Islam and what we believe, and this is in short the introduction of Ahmadiyyat to those who do not know much about Ahmadiyyat. The founder of Ahmadiyyat, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad of Qadian, made one claim which also covered in fact two claims. He claimed to be that promised reformer which was awaited not only by Muslims but also by Christians. And what was the name of the reformer awaited by Christians? That was Jesus, Messiah. Jesus, son of Mary, the Messiah, was awaited by the Christians to pay a second visit to the earth. And the Muslims were awaiting Al-Mahdi, the guided one, the leader who would be appointed by Allah. But in Islam, these two titles got together. In Christianity, they were awaiting only for one person, that is Messiah. But in Islam, they were awaiting for both, because Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam had prophesied that Christ would appear this time among Islam, among Muslims. And as such, it would be a Muslim Christ who would appear during the latter days. So the claim of Hazrat Mirza Sahib was that two different people don't come to the world from same God. What happens is, it is the same person who represents God who is mentioned under different titles. So don't confuse yourself by imagining that there would be one Imam Mahdi born among the Muslims who would claim to be from God, and there would be another by the name of Jesus Christ. born among early Christians, in Judaism, in the Jews, paying a second visit to the earth. He said no such thing happens in religious history. Search far and wide, you may hear of people promising, or people being promised, then that an old founder of religion or reformer would again come. But it never happens like that. Somebody does come, the promise is not false, but he only comes in the image of the previous one. So only like that the promise is fulfilled. So don't take those messages too literally. Having argued that, he also gave historical examples in his support. He said, you are awaiting Jesus Christ to come personally, bodily, yet again, because he promised he would come. But you forget his own verdict passed against such literal understanding of the scriptures. What was that verdict? He pointed out that even before Jesus Christ, it was mentioned that Elijah, or Elia is also mentioned, he would descend bodily from the heaven. Every Jew knew that by heart. Every Jew remembered that this would be the sign appearing before Jesus Christ would come. So, Elijah would descend bodily from heaven, and then he will announce to the world that the time of Jesus Christ is near at hand, so open up the locks of your hearts, be ready to accept. Now what happened? Jesus did appear, but without that literal Elijah descending from heaven. So people used to mock and taunt the followers of Jesus Christ, asking them, okay, he could be right, of course, but please produce Elijah from the heaven first. Or do you deny scriptures? Do you say the scriptures were false? Of course they could not deny scriptures. Now this question was raised in the presence of Jesus Christ, and he answered this question. I don't know the exact words, but I'll tell you the effect. He said, John the Baptist is the same Elijah who was to descend from heaven. Accept it or not. But he has come. Now Hazrat Mirza Sahib pointed out, both to the Christians and the Muslims, that would you agree with Jesus' verdict or not? People are expected to come bodily from heaven, as clearly as Elijah was. And yet somebody in their name, in their character comes, and those who follow the literal meaning overmuch, they are disappointed. They don't recognize such a person. They continue to reject. So he said, it's up to you. Having explained this situation, he said, I am the same Jesus descended from heaven exactly as Elijah descended from heaven before Jesus Christ. And for that, with that explanation, you don't have to expect two separate persons appearing. One the old Jesus and one Imam Mahdi. He said in the case of Islam, the reform which was promised was to be one person with two titles. One title was Al-Imam al-Mahdi, the guided leader appointed by God in Islam. The other was the promised Messiah, the Christ, who was promised both to the people of Christianity and the people of Islam. So this was his explanation of how things would come to pass. Now he came and he was rejected by a large number of Muslims, of course, as you know very well. But what happened? How did God treat him and his followers? This is the issue which is still alive, which requires your particular attention. Because if I quote just history to you, you may be in doubt about the authenticity of our records of history. But what you see before your eyes And what you know about Christianity as it happened, you can compare it with the history of Ahmadiyyat very easily, and the present situation of Ahmadiyya. You know, Christianity was opposed more vehemently, if anything, than Ahmadiyyat was opposed by the people of the time of Hazrat Masih Maud Islam. More vehemently also in the sense that the atrocities committed against the early Christians were far more grievous and beastly than the atrocities committed against Ahmadis. Of course, there are so many atrocities committed against Ahmadis, but in comparison, they are paled. You know, they were put to death by being presented to the wild beast in arenas, and they were burnt alive in their homes in large numbers. The same attempts were made against Ahmadis, but God saved them from being burnt alive. That is a different story. But altogether, to sum up this long history of persecution and God's treatment, we can say one thing for certain. During all the phases of revived persecution and renewed persecution against Christianity, there did not dawn a single day in the history of Christianity when Christianity was pulverized and reduced and rendered powerless. In the face of all this atrocity, it continued to march forward, continued to gain greater following, and emerge larger rather than smaller through the middle of persecution. Now this is a living history. There is something for which you don't have to go to the books. This is exactly as you see history emerging to the present times. We do not trust books for this. We know Christianity has almost conquered the whole world. So if this claim was not right, how could there be Christianity today found in such power and grandeur? So that is what I mean, the living history. And similarly apply the same principle to the history of Ahmadiyyat, and the living history of Ahmadiyyat would repeat exactly the same thing. Every attempt to destroy Ahmadiyyat kicked back on the enemies, and every attempt was frustrated by God and resulted in exactly the opposite results, in exactly the opposite consequences of that persecution. I was turned out of, practically, literally, by the government of Pakistan during Zia's time, 10 years ago. And the spread of Ahmadiyyat has increased by last year, I'm talking of last year, this year it will be more, by a factor of 50 times during those 9 years passed during the last, till the last annual gathering of Ahmadiyya community here in UK. So 9 years of exile brought us such great success that instead of having 5,000 Ahmadis converted per year, we got 200,000 Ahmadis converted in 1 year and more. And this year, I hope, inshallah, the pace will increase to about 100 times. So this is what Allah does to us. That is what the enemies do to us. And if you compare us with the early history of Christianity, you will find that the comparison is, if at all, to our advantage. In the first 100 years of Christianity, it had spread to around a score of countries, not more. But in the first 100 years of Ahmadiyya history, we have spread to 140 countries of the world. We have emerged as a much more formidable and reckonable power than Christianity was at the end of its first century. So this is a short answer to your question.
Okay.
I hope it would satisfy Your query?
Likely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Just on what you are saying, say about the people changing over to Ahmadi. Is it only from the Islamia side or both Islamia
from
and
every
Christian?
side, of course. From pagans, from Christians, largely from Christians nowadays from Africa.
Do we have pagans?
Huh?
Do we have pagans?
Well, I'm not often, I don't remember, but in every country these figures are not secrets.
Okay.
They're open, they're published, they're announced, and every year they're announced on Jalsa Salana through television to all the world. So there is nothing, no hanky-panky going on under the surface, I assure you. We are proud of our honesty and truth, and we do not hide things from the rest of the world. You know, once I was warned by somebody that you are announcing the successes of Ahmadiyyat in large numbers on television, and you know there are very powerful governments against Ahmadiyyat. They would begin to influence those countries, and they will start a counter movement, and you may lose whatever you have gained. So please don't tell these figures. Like you suspected, perhaps we would hide these figures. I said, no. It is God who is doing it, and how can they frustrate the designs of God? Let them do whatever they please. I am going to tell the whole world the blessings of Allah which are being showered upon us. And I quoted one verse of the Holy Quran, particularly admonishing us to adopt such an attitude. In one verse in Surah Duha, Hazrat Muhammad Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam is ordered by Allah, وَأَمَّا بِنِعْمَةِ رَبِّكَ فَحَدِّثْ. When God shows His blessings to you, showers His blessings upon you, don't keep them to yourself. Announce them, broadcast them, hadith, relate them to others. So I said, this is the instruction to my holy master. So through him, I am also to follow the same instruction. So I will not hide things from enemies, lest they should do us harm. Let them do whatever they please. Please.
All right.
Thank you.
Your Holiness, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Your Holiness, my question has been a long, burden one on me. My question to you, Your Holiness, is there any verse in the Holy Quran that says a woman is unfit to rule? For
A woman cannot rule?
Cannot rule. For example, their organization,
Understand.
their leader with special reference to
Exactly on the contrary. There are verses in the Holy Quran which tell us that not only a woman is fit to rule, but sometimes fittest to rule. Her one single opinion against all the elders under her is superior to them. This is the verdict of the Quran. In reference to Malika Saba, when Solomon, Hazrat Solomon, who is understood to be a king by the Jews and Christians, but we believe him to be a prophet of Allah, when he sent a message to the Queen of Sheba that I advise you to submit. Don't raise arms against my army. You'll be crushed and you will destroy your country. So accept this when this is peace. When she sought advice from her elders, all of them with one accord advised her to not to be cowed by this message. He said, we are very great warriors, and we will fight it out. All men were wrong, according to the verdict of the Quran. That one woman was right. He said, no, I've heard you, but he is right, Solomon is right. And she said, when great kings enter a people, a country, what they do is they turn their nobles into their meanly people. and they turn their lowly people into their nobles. I don't want that to happen to this country. So what a wise advice and what a wonderful tribute to her wisdom. After that, I am surprised from where do the mullahs, the non-Ahmadi scholars, draw their authority when they claim that Islam does not permit a woman to rule. Right?
Yes,
Thank you.
At least I forgot to introduce myself. My name is Fatmata Binta.
I'm very, very pleased to meet you.
Thank you very much. Assalamu alaikum.
Allah bless you. Wa alaikum salam.
My name is Maki Sheikh.
Maki?
Maki Sheikh from Kono, Sierra Leone.
And are you a Mende or a Timani or something else? Huh?
I'm in Madingo.
Madingo?
Yeah. Your Holiness, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
My question this evening, Your Holiness, we know one thing that Muslim and Christians all worship one God. I want to know whether Christianity accepts Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam as a prophet. And secondly, I want you to clear to me the conflicting question about Jesus being the Son of God.
Huh?
Jesus Christ being the Son of God, as the Christians do believe.
Right.
So I want you to clear those two.
Inshallah, I'll speak on these questions, but rather briefly. Number one, although both Muslims and Christians believe that they worship one God and one alone,
Yeah.
but practically what you say is that in the churches of Christianity, they also worship Jesus Christ as some God.
Yeah.
So I can't understand how it could be one God and two gods at the same time. And they claim a sort of equation of equality, yet at the same time a position of a higher status for God the Father and low status for God the Son. You see, this is the contradiction within this claim. The problem is that if there is an equation of equality to the extent that three persons become one, this can only happen if there is total equation of equality, as if one is the other and the other is the one. But in practice, what we find in Christianity, they give light to this claim during their practices. They worship not only God, but also the Son, but they do not worship the Holy Ghost. And in some places where they worship the Holy Ghost, they also worship Mary, the Mother of God, and also worship so many saints. So where is the concept of equality left?
Yeah.
You understand the point?
Yeah, I understand the point.
And the second thing, what you said about the Son.
Yeah, I mean, the second thing is whether the Christianity do accept Prophet Muhammad as a prophet.
Oh, that's right. Unfortunately, they cannot do it without defiance to Christianity. You see, there is a question of human decency and a question of faith. For the sake of human decency, you cannot compromise religion and faith. So you should honorably express your inner views in kind words, of course, but the true views you hold. You can't choose words for the sake of other people, lest they should be offended. So when the Christians tell us, Holy Prophet is good, Holy Prophet Muhammad, we know it is not right for them to say Holy Prophet. On the one hand, they believe he is an impostor, and there is no second option for them. If they follow Christianity as is understood today by all the Christians of the world, then the Holy Prophet is nothing but an impostor. So why should you say a holy impostor? His Holiness the impostor. So that we understand is only a sign of courtesy. But courtesy compromises their faith. What we do when we say Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, Jesus Christ, blessings of Allah and peace be upon him, we do it according to the dictates of the Quran. As a Muslim, we have no other option but to accept him as a true person. Right?
Yeah.
So although sometimes they say to be kind to you, Holy Prophet, maybe also you are right that Jesus Christ was Son of God, he was a prophet. That the second part, he is a prophet, is false. If he is a prophet, then Jesus was not the Son of God.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullah.
I am Muhammad Kamara.
Muhammad Kamara.
Yes, born in Freetown.
Right. From Freetown.
Yes, sir. My question is not particularly of the Islamic belief, but it is more.
Anything. You're free to ask any question, please.
Yes, yeah.
Yes.
I would like to know whether the Ahmadiyya is a different sect of Islam, and if it does believe in the death of Prophet Isa, who is Jesus,
Right.
and as there is a widespread belief among Muslims that he did not die on the cross.
See, Ahmadiyya is not a sect of Islam. Ahmadiyya is Islam. This is what we claim. See, there is no halfway position for Ahmadiyya, because as against all the sects of Islam who are awaiting the ultimate arrival of a promised reformer, we believe that he has arrived. So if we are right, then their Islam has no longer any authenticity, any validity, because we have accepted the one who was sent by God, and we have been guided by him who was guided by God. So his Islam must be the right Islam. And that is exactly what was prophesied with reference to the advent of the Mahdi by the Holy Prophet of Islam. That he would sit on the chair of judgment. He would decide between the differences of one sect and the differences of another. And his will be the right guided judgment. And the same thing is also said with reference to Jesus Christ when he would come, as we understand, metaphorically next time. So either we are right, and if we are right, we are Islam, personified. We are representing Islam, and this is the only true version of Islam, because if we are right, then it is stamped by the one leader, religious leader, who was guided by Allah himself, so he could not be wrong. The remaining are to be taken only as sects because they themselves claim that the divine reformer has not yet come. So we don't know, they don't know. They have no right to claim that only they are right as against the remaining of the 72. Because there is no divine stamp of the would-be reformer according to them. The reformer has not yet come, so I refer to him as would-be reformer. The would-be reformer, as long as he doesn't appear, they have no sanction, divine sanction in favor of their views. And the Holy Prophet says, when he comes, he will tell you who is right and who is wrong. So they have to be treated as sects in Islam. Those who follow the Imam Mahdi, they have only two possibilities. Either they are true Muslims and they alone are exactly the true Muslims as were seen in the early period of Islam. Because Imam Mahdi's training and bringing about would not be different from the early period of Islam. Or the Mahdi, the so-called Mahdi, is an impostor. So in that case, we are not a sect of Islam even then. If we are following an impostor, then we are outside the pale of Islam. So if we are Muslims, we are Muslims, the Muslims. And if the claimant is false, then we have nothing to do with Islam.
And as I said, I would like to know whether the Ahmadiyya does believe in the death of Christ.
We believe in the death of Jesus Christ, but not on cross. We believe that he was delivered from the cross alive. And God saw to it that he did not die upon the cross. And we believe it for so many reasons. Reasons which are rooted in some verses of the Quran, reasons which are rooted in the New Testament, reasons which are rooted in the Old Testament, reasons which belong to the common sense of man. What we believe is that he could not have been killed or murdered upon cross for so many reasons, one of them being that some of his prophecies had not yet got fulfilled, and they were divine words. Jesus was told by Allah, by God, that he would leave the people of Judea, those two tribes who were living in Judea, and go to the lost sheep of Israel, which were 10 tribes of Israel, which had migrated from the mainland of Judaism to other countries of the world, in East world. Now this is an accepted history, there is no debate on this issue. At the time of Jesus Christ, there were only 2 tribes of Israelites left in Palestine and areas around. And in the northern territory, northern regime of the Jews, they were, because of an invasion by Babylonians, etc., they were thrown out of their lands and they were forced to migrate, and that was the great exodus of the 10 tribes. So Jesus Christ told his followers that he would leave them and go to the lost sheep of Israel. If he died upon cross, as Christians believe, then what about that promise? If they say and insist that all right, the death was temporary and he ascended to the heaven within a few days afterwards, again the question still rises, were the 10 tribes of Israel ascended also before him to the heaven? If not, then he could not have ascended to heaven without fulfilling his mission and his promise by conveying the message of his message to also the lost tribe of Israel. So this is a biblical evidence. The evidence of New Testament is so powerful, I don't see any route of escape for anyone who would disagree. He promised clearly, I'll leave you and go to the lost sheep of Israel, and we know the lost sheep of Israel did not ascend to heaven. They were scattered somewhere in the eastern countries. So he must have been delivered from the cross alive. He must have been given a chance by a God to migrate in pursuit of those tribes. And this is exactly the Ahmadiyya belief. Secondly, when he prayed all night to God and also kept his followers, his disciples awake, he rebuked them when some of them went to sleep. This is not the time for sleeping. Come join me in prayer to God that may Allah remove this cup of death from me, this bitter cup. Now this also gives life to some Christian beliefs. They depend on the optional sacrifice of Jesus Christ for carrying the sins of the sinful humanity. If it was not optional, then the whole claim will fall to ground. But what do we see in him? He is praying the whole night, "Oh God the Father, please take away this cup. I don't want." And he must have been given some promise. Because at the end of this episode, we hear him having cried out, Eli, 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 lema sabachthani. O my Lord, why have you abandoned me? Or have you abandoned me? If this was destined that he would give up his ghost upon the cross, and if he himself was more willing than God the Father, it was at his own initiation that he was crucified and gave up his ghost, then why this cry, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani? This expresses disappointment and great surprise, unpleasant surprise. So my argument, I'm quite sure, is very logical and understandable, that during his prayer of the night before, and those of his disciples, God must have conveyed them the glad tidings that you will be saved. This is my responsibility. So before swooning, we consider that to be not death but swooning. Before swooning under the torture of crucifixion for a few hours, he must have swooned, and before swooning he might have entertained the fear that what's happening, maybe I'm dying. So he expressed that last cry. It was in fact not only a protest but a prayer. Oh God, don't abandon me. You have promised me otherwise. He was taken down from the cross. Ointment was applied on his wounds and the whole body was embalmed. An ointment which contained many healing agents. We have a full account of that, those constituents of that ointment, well preserved. And then he was kept in the sepulchre for 3 days or around that period. And again it reminds us of another prophecy. During the period of pre-crucifixion era, he also told his disciples that these wanton people of this age, they want a miracle. No miracle will be shown unto them except the miracle of Jonah of the fish. Now that also must have come to be fulfilled. Otherwise he was not a true prophet either, not to mention the Son of God. What was that miracle? Jonah was swallowed by a whale, as it is related, and he remained in the belly of the fish for a while. It is said for 3 days and nights. And then the whale vomited and still he was alive. He never died for a moment during that period. It was not a case of revival. That miracle did not relate to revival under adverse conditions. It was a case of survival under adverse situations. The miracle of Jonah lay not in the fact that he had died once and then revived from the dead. It was a simple case of survival under heavy odds. So this prophecy must have got fulfilled again, and he must have been saved from the cross. So what we hear is he is seen walking alive after 3 days of his being kept under special care. And what sort of Jesus that is? Is he very different from the one who had appeared before crucifixion? Was there any change in his form and his attitude? According to the New Testament reports, none whatsoever. He was the same person, the same habits, with the same body, which bore the marks, the fresh marks of those wounds, which were inflicted upon him. And the same body which required food to survive. He was there in the same body. So once he appeared before his people, some of his people, who were really scared, and they thought he was a ghost. His response was, I am not a ghost. Now this is a very important statement of Jesus Christ. On the one hand, we hear some of the witnesses claiming that at the end of the crucifixion he gave up the ghost. And this is what is most relied upon by the Christian authorities to to prove their point that, you see, it is written very clearly that he gave up the ghost. But the person who was witnessing was someone else. He was witnessing things from a distance. He had no subjective experience. As against that person, we have the evidence of Jesus himself contradicting that statement vehemently and saying, I'm not a ghost. So the new life of Jesus must have been in the form of a ghost if he gave up the ghost. But he says no. And he asks them, he beckons them towards him. He says, look here, look at these wounds. The same. Look at this wound. I'm the same person. And to dispel any remaining doubts, he inquires from them what they are eating. They say, bread and fish. He said, would you please pass some on to me? I also like to eat. And he ate of that. So all such evidence points out to the same conclusion which I have been building up so far, that Jesus was alive when he was taken down from the cross. Time is over. अच्छा काफी देर से वो हाँ कितनी देर हो पता नहीं. Unfortunately, I am told that the time designated for this meeting is over since last 15 minutes. And there is another group who is awaiting my arrival. We have a discussion group to follow this meeting. So I'll have to take leave of you, although I was thoroughly enjoying participating in this question and answer session. I hope next time, and there should be a next time again, at least one next time, if not many more, they should be invited with more time at my disposal, please. 1 hour is always too short, you know. I know, you know it from experience, that such sessions always continue into maybe 2 hours, 3 hours, and even more. So have plenty of time available, and then we shall meet again. And I take leave of you now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much
for your kindness in coming and sharing your time with us. Assalamu alaikum and God bless you.